let's talk really briefly about writing style. And most of you know all these things, but if you're like me, a reminder every so often can't hurt. And basically, I'm going to tell you about the mistakes I tend to make. I forget to write in active voice. And I tell you, if you're writing a paper where you've been told you can't use I or we, writing in the active voice is tough. In this course, I'm fine with you writing in first person. The old rule 20 years ago was if it's a quantitative paper, then you can't have any first person references. And if it's a qualitative paper, then you must. And that was the way of perhaps indicating that there is some of our personal understanding in our qualitative research. But we've come a ways since then. We realize in our quantitative research, we bring our personalities and our preconceived understandings. And so we're starting to write quantitative research with I. Um, and you may, because you'll want to go through your paper, especially after you've written it, and just look at um, your sentence structure. So Sam based his research on current theory. That's very active. Current theory was used as a base for Sam's research. That's the way I tend to write. It's not that active voice, and I would go through and look for those. Look for past participles. That's a good clue that um, you're using a passive voice. Here again, the karate instructor was missed as compared to several of the students missed the karate instructor. So if you see a verb and then by several of the students, so that the actor has actually been put into this prepositional phrase, then that's a clue to you also that you're not using active voice. It's tough, but get in there and make your sentences active. Take credit for the decisions that you made, the way you wrote your survey, the way you're writing your literature review. Typically, in a literature review, when you talk about each author, you use past tense. So, vaguely wrote about bracketing as a unique individual experience. Okay, so vaguely wrote instead of vaguely writes. And it's tempting to say writes because you have the paper right in front of you. It feels like the present, but the truth is, he wrote this previously, and we should keep that in past tense. Okay, let's look at pronouns here. It's so difficult because you don't want your paper to be full of he or she's. But on the other hand, if you're just talking about one person, you don't want to use their or them. So the parent is aware enough to know their limitations. Well, this is one parent here, and their means more than one, so they don't match. You can change it like this: when parents are aware, they will know their limitations, or the parent is aware enough to know his or her limitations. And that's tough. I prefer this second one, but there will be times when you need to use his or her. And likewise, a student must keep their grade point average. Well, their means students. So you could say students must keep their grade point average above 3.0. Or again, you can use the his or her. In this case, his or her is preferable because we're not talking about an average of all of the students. We're not really talking about students as a group. It's tough, but go through with a fine-tooth comb and look for some of the ways you can fix these things. When you're through with your literature review, go through and do this first sentence test and make sure that if all you were to do is to read the first sentence of each paragraph, your argument would still flow, your literature review would still make sense, and your outline would come through. And I know that sounds pretty technical, but this is technical writing. Unfortunately, it is a little bit more boring than the novel we're going to write when we finally finish our degree. Okay, some details. Go ahead and use I or we. Don't let the research take on human qualities. And I do this too. Like, the program was persuaded. Well, you can't persuade a program, so be careful. The leaders of the program were persuaded, right? Or the authors of the program, but the program itself can't be persuaded. It's not human. Watch out for redundancies. Gosh, I do this too. 4 different groups. Well, the reason that there are 4 is probably because they're different. And then be complete and be concise. My advisor in statistics would always tell me, write everything you can think of so it's long, it's messy. And then in every revision, your goal is to shorten it. Keep that information there because it's important, but find ways to shorten it. Find ways to tighten it up so that when you're done, you've been able to include everything that you know and everything that you've discovered, but it's concise. It flows, it's logical, and it isn't wordy like this PowerPoint presentation. Okay, then a few more details. Think about your writing as a mystery novel. Your literature review is where you lay out all of the clues. And unlike a mystery novel, don't put any clues in there that don't matter. Every clue needs to matter. But you lay these out in your literature review. Here's all the information. And you're leading your reader along so that when they're done with the literature review, they have the same question you do. Oh, thanks for giving me this information, but what's the difference? Or how do they perceive this? Or why this? Then you're on your way. Then your reader is hooked and they know why you're asking the question that you're asking. And then, of course, tell them you're going to answer that question with a certain instrument and get them on board with that too. This is why I'm using this survey or these questions or this approach. This is why I'm sampling these people. Make sure that your research question is concise, that it includes the detail that your reader needs to understand what you're interested in specifically, possibly even who you're going to ask. So, a question like, what kind of ice cream do people like, is not a good research question because I don't even know what you mean by that and where you're going with that. But then if we come here and make it more specific, is there a difference between people who choose chocolate? Or what's the relationship between age and their choice? Or can I predict the amount that people will eat? Just be thinking about as you work through your literature review, revisiting your research question again and again and making it increasingly more specific and more pointed at what you're actually going to do. Those are just a few hints. If anyone else has hints, please post them. We can always help each other become better writers. It's the quest of a lifetime and it's worthwhile. Thanks.